The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Mike McAuliffe. With me, as always, in the studio is my co-host, Perry Heichu.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well.
You're part of this team, Perry. We have, as always, we've got a bunch of news. We'll start off actually with just something which is late breaking here in Nevada today, and it's not a major piece unless you're trying to get your paperwork done. KSNV TV reported that the Nevada State Medical Marijuana Program has been taken offline by their IT department. That doesn't mean that the program itself is offline or not running or
it's
not
just
working. It's
back to paper.
But yeah, their website, their deputy administrator Joe Pollock said the site was taken offline after their IT department pointed out security issues. He said there's been no evidence to suggest a security breach has occurred, and that the website is being evaluated by the state Division of Health IT department, but he doesn't know when it's going to be back up. So if you're just happen to be going on there looking for your renewal or looking for a new application, the state is experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Yeah, I recently got it's not a packet anymore. It was just a letter with a piece of paper saying you can do this online and this is how you go through it and this and then of course this went down, but it's okay. I'm not due till February or something. They're just giving me my 2-month notice, but I'm not sure whether this has any effect on their ability to see what you're purchasing at the dispensaries or not, because when I was up purchasing cannabis from or purchasing my medicine from a local dispensary the other day, they seemed to not be so sure about what I was able to buy and just said, well, to hell with it. You know what I mean? And just let me go do my thing.
That people were saying the site was down and they couldn't track how much was being done.
I'm not exactly sure. Like, did they have to take the whole system down just because of this? And if so,
one would think that they're actually two separate programs and two separate domains running.
That's what I thought.
Being the public portal for people coming into Div Health and getting involved in the program, but one would think that the actual software that communicates between the dispensaries and the state to show these patient counts and amounts bought and the like, you would think that that would be a completely different system, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Very likely it's going to come back up just in the next day or two, but we'll keep an eye on this, and if it's still down as we approach airtime next week, we'll take a closer look into it. One thing I would say on this, because you mentioned paper, is that back in 2001, when the program started, not only did they have the all the forms that you have, but the main form that you had to fill out was in quintuplicate. There were 5 copies that had to go to 5 different agencies within the state government and this and that. And ultimately, in 2004, the Department of Agriculture, who was running the program at that time, indicated that they needed to start charging patients for the packs, because they said that it cost them about $50 to mail out each application pack to a patient, and so they used that to justify to the legislature the $50 initial application fee that they charged for a decade. So that's where that comes from. That's where that came from, because originally the program was completely free. You could write in and the state would send you the paperwork, and that was that. But what really as people who listen to this show know, I'm on the progressive side, and so I think that in some times, government running efficiently can provide an answer. But what I saw here was that you had these packs going out in the state saying, "Oh my God, it's $50 a piece." And I was looking at the packs, having received them and distributed them to patients, and saying, gee, if I could only get a concession to mail these things out for $10 a piece or $5 a piece. There is no way that that pack should cost the state $50 to mail out and therefore pass it on to the patients. And, that's one of those instances where I say, boy, a little privatization might actually be a good thing.
Oh, sure.
there.
Well, something that was just kind of running through my head, we were talking about burden of patients and fees and things like that. Do you think that the passage of question 4 might have any bearing on the taxation of medical marijuana, considering it was a big taking taxes away from medicinal equipment?
Talking
and
about
things
question
like that?
4 here in Nevada, you're talking about the initiative that was taking medical devices out of the sales tax.
Is that was it all? It was just devices. It didn't. Well, I guess normal medicine already isn't taxed, so there would be no reason to put that language in that bill, right?
If,
it would
if
just
you're
be
buying
us.
prescription medicine, for example, it is not taxed, and so.
So if you have your medical marijuana card, you shouldn't have to pay sales taxes on your grow equipment.
Wow, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I know it's kind of a stretch, but it's just a thought.
And one would think that if it is indeed medicine, as the state of Nevada says that it is, that you should not have to be paying tax on that. But in order to get these businesses off the ground and the state to approve that, there were several levels of tax built in before,
Sure, of course.
before the consumer even sees it, in the form of excise taxes. And so, and you see across the country that they're taxing these people very, very heavily. So on the one hand, the state governments are saying, oh yeah, we understand, yeah, marijuana's medicine and it's your medicine and you need your medicine, that's fine. But we're not going to treat it like medicine because we're still going to charge a tax on it.
Right.
And it just shows how haphazard the implementation of these laws are and the thinking behind them is. But anyway, the State of Nevada Medical Marijuana Program website is down at the moment, but it will be back shortly. They're getting millions of dollars in fees, so I'm
they'll
sure
be
they have
fine.
the money to do that. Staying here in Nevada, we have a story also out of the Las Vegas Review-Journal by reporter Sean Whaley, and this was on the 11th, and it says that implementing recreational pot rules won't tax Nevada's budget, officials say, and it leads off saying that neither state regulators nor lawmaker, who would be Tick Sigerblom, who pushed through Nevada's medical marijuana program, expect funding to be an issue as the state moves into the realm of pot sales. Nevada has money in its medical marijuana program that could be used for any upfront costs for recreational marijuana, such as licensing, inspections of new dispensaries, and the like. So here you've got something where the state is using the money they have in the medical marijuana program now as a slush fund to start the recreational side. And
Well,
they're gonna say, well, it's happening in
I'm okay
good
with
health,
that. It
so-
allows them to not dip into the general fund and have it be seen as a cost. So if they can just kind of rob Peter to pay Paul, I suppose, as long as the money is reimbursed into
or
the
more
medical marijuana
borrow from
program.
Peter,
Yeah.
because in this case they are going to get that money back.
That's fine. There's no doubt that the revenue will be there soon enough to pay it back. So as long as that's fulfilled, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with it.
I don't either, especially. It's just that you had all of this money coming into the Division of Health over the past couple of years as these different MME applicants
Fees
were
come in,
putting
yeah.
the fees up, putting the their first annual licensing and all that, and so the division was making several $1 million out of this. So a lot of people wondered why that amount of money was really necessary, and still can. But at least they're using some of it to jumpstart the rec side, and that will be a good thing.
Seems like they're getting their ducks in a row. Like you said, they want to push this through early in the legislative session to get these medical shops rolled over into recreational, and this is the first thing, is getting that money lined up to allow the division to do what they need to do.
Well, I know that Tick Sigerblom is planning on introducing this legislation in the first couple of days
Oh, yeah, they'll try.
of the session. They're going to try to get it in there. However, what some of my other sources from Carson City are telling me is that the entire legislature is not going to be in a hurry to pass this thing. And the optimistic view that the dispensary owners are hoping for is that this legislation will be crafted and passed by April to allow adults to get out there and start patronizing these facilities. But in fact, if you look at marijuana measures in the Nevada State Legislature over the past decade plus, these measures are generally the last things to get passed just before the session closes.
Nevada's a very different state than it was 4 years ago. So we will see in terms of politics and demographics, and a lot has changed. We've gone from red to purple to a definitive blue rather quickly here.
And actually,
as people say, traditionally this and that. It's like, honestly, there have been a lot of very non-traditional things going on in Nevada over the last couple of years. Our Republican governor passing the biggest tax increase in Nevada history, paid parking in Las Vegas all over the place. I could point to dozens and dozens of individual little things that can say, well, Nevada's going in a strange direction. There's nothing traditional going on about what we're trying to do here in the state in the last few years. So, we'll see where this all heads.
And as somebody who's grown up here, you have a
absolutely.
better perspective of these things than
absolutely.
most people.
I'm not exactly sure how I feel about all of it yet. We'll see how it comes out.
One thing that I found interesting in this RJ article is a paragraph where it said, Segerblum said that there are enough gray areas with the question 2 wording that additional legislation may be needed in the 2017 session, which begins February 6th. So that I find fascinating, because the way our state constitution works is that if we have a voter initiative, the legislature is not supposed to tweak it or otherwise screw with it for at least 3 years. The word of the people, the mandate of the people, is supposed to be enacted, and that's that, and don't start futzing around with it because that's not what the people voted for. However, with what he's saying, that there are enough gray areas in question 2 that additional legislation may be needed, that opens up a huge can of worms. If you're going to say, well, we're just going to, open up the hood and we're just going to take a screwdriver and adjust there a little bit, and we're going to take a wrench and adjust here a little bit. Pretty soon,
I kind of like that,
because
question 2 needs major surgery, so I'm all for it. If they want to cut it right open, they want to do open heart surgery on it right away, day one. I want to be in there, watching.
And sure. I don't disagree with that, but the reason that I point this out is because there will be people in the legislature, I'm sure, who will say to us or to people who are moving for reform or want to carry this a little further, well, they'll say, we can't do that because the voter mandate was this, and it doesn't give us the ability to go 1 inch over the line from
there's
that,
something to be said
really
about
does.
that. Well, there's something to be said about that. It's a dangerous precedent we're attempting to set. We're trying to open this, and it'll open the door potentially for other people down the line to adjust voter initiatives that we may not be in support of. It's very similar to, like, Harry Reid introduced the nuclear option to the Senate, and now the Republicans are prepared to do the exact same thing. He was warned about this, and it's going to burn him, and that will be one of his legacies. I'm sad to say. I think next.
It was going to happen
thing.
Sooner or later with some.
But it happened. But it happened with him.
But it was him.
And I think it's going to be the same kind of thing here. If we do this and we pull it off, you better be prepared for what comes down the road 5, 6, 10 years down the line when we have things that aren't, we're not happy about that this happens to. So we need to be prepared for both sides of that.
That's true, but to say if we pull it off this or that indicates that we actually have a hand in this. From what I see in this article, it's going to happen. It's not whether we're pushing that or not, or whether we're
it's whether. Well, in my opinion, the validity of this will be weighed upon whether me being we can, and the forces of good, in my opinion, try to insert certain language once they're able to open that hood that will protect people and make necessary changes that we believe are better for ourselves and our communities, and that a lot of people feel are better for the community. And if we're not able to do that, then I'll call it a failure. And it's very selfish of me to call it that way, but it just is what it is.
Well, I think that I agree with you what you're saying, and my point here is that if they are going to change it, then it is up to us as the citizenry to say, well, if you're going to do that, we want you to twist it this way. We want
Oh
you
yeah.
to turn a screwdriver.
Yeah, if you're going to open it
that
up, we
way.
want our say too. What
Exactly
the hell?
that, and there is a lot of improvement. There's a lot of room for improvement in question 2, and as Senator Segerblom said, there are some gray areas, and so if there are gray areas that are going to get addressed, my thought as being an activist in the community, and I would hope that our listenership, our viewership would agree with this, is that if changes are going to be made, we want to be able to have input on that. Now, I like Tick a lot, and so I don't think that he's going to do things which will be bad for us, but at the same time I think that it's up to us who are very much involved and interested in these sort of things to be out there lobbying for the changes that we want. And because you've lobbied up at the
I don't think a lot of the changes that people want are going to make a big difference in the bottom line of these recreational dispensaries. The right for patients to grow regardless of the 25-mile rule, or not patients, just citizens at this point. Regular citizens who fall under question 2's protection. We want them to be able to grow. This is separate from the patients who also should have the right to grow. Definitely, they should be able to grow their necessary amount. That's mandated to them under the Constitution of the state of Nevada. I don't really see that crushing these people's business. If it was me and I could change it, I would want to have an unlimited number of dispensaries. Like if you fall within zoning and the city or that municipality will allow that many licenses to come in, I don't see the state I don't think the state should have the ability to stop said municipalities from taking as many as they so choose. And if they want to roll them back and change the zoning, they can choose to do that at a later date, and we should let the free market decide. But that's a big major change that a lot of the pre-existing dispensary owners who donated to question 2 will have a big problem with.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to happen, but I think we could get lounges in, like we were talking before the show, real quick. I mean, we could go back and forth all day long just about what we would do about this one.
And I think that is one of these gray areas that Tick was talking about is lounges, on-site consumption. And I do think that will work its way into the legislation. But once again, where it's up to us in the community to is not just to cheer on, we're going to have lounges and we can go have hash bars like coffee shops in Amsterdam, but no, we want to be able to say to the legislature, this is a good idea. However, make the barrier to entry much lower than you made the first time around with the MMEs, because that way you give the disappearing middle-class entrepreneurs in Nevada the opportunity to go in there and take part in this revolution, and also to come into it from a different perspective than some of the teams that have assembled. There are license holders in the state of Nevada who are exceptionally qualified and have a great and diverse portfolio of experience and knowledge that they bring to this industry. But as we have seen, there are also Elmer Fuds out there who are completely clueless,
borderline
as to
prohibitionists
this
with the deep pockets.
And some of these people have these licenses, and now they are going to fiercely protect those licenses, just as happened in Arizona a couple of years back when the dispensary owners were fighting the initiative to legalize in Arizona prior to this cycle. And they said, well, we need to recoup our investment, we need to protect our profits, and that's it in a nutshell.
Well,
they wanted to control and monopolize that market.
You can call it evil, you can call it capitalism, you can call it lobbying, whatever it is what it is. It's been done here in Nevada for a long period of time. Back in the day when the Gaming Control Board wasn't around, you could basically throw up 4 walls and a roof and put anything you wanted under it. And then all of a sudden, after these people started making some money and getting organized, they said, hey, maybe we want to write some rules. That's where the 250 room rule came. So you couldn't have a full casino floor without 250 rooms, and you had to be within zone. Obviously, they were trying to squeeze everybody out because a lot of the operators already had a lot of what they thought was the good land already wrapped up, and they just wanted to kind of push the people that they didn't know already as far away as they could. And that's why a lot of these controlling families here still maintain a lot. And it's just one of those stories, you know what I mean? So I'm not surprised that that the pre-existing dispensary owners would go after that. In fact, I was pushing to have only Nevada residents to be able to own dispensaries at the first, just to try to lock people out to give us a better chance to get in on the ground floor.
Back in 2009,
well, and that's what Alaska,
and it worked for them.
And that's what Alaska's done also, and it's driving me nuts because I wanted to get up there and invest, and they shut me out. So it's just one of those things. It is what it is. So here we are.
Crazy. So anyway, according to this article, it says that there are 49 medical marijuana dispensaries open in Nevada.
Wow.
So here we are,
Holy cow.
a couple of years after SB 374 got passed, and they were allowing 66 in the state. And here we are, we're allowed 66, but we only have 40. So that's 26 dispensary licenses that have not been taken advantage of.
I didn't think we had 50 open yet, to tell you the truth. I didn't realize it had been so many. That's impressive.
Yeah.
But still, like you said, what about these 26?
So that allows 49 open. That allows 17 that have not opened. And you can say that 12 of the 17 counties are not allowing medical marijuana facilities within their county borders. So that would count for 12 of them. But that still means that in this emerging marijuana industry in Nevada, that you still had 7 licenses granted that have not opened in the state. And as I recall, Commissioner Sisolak saying early in the year that if people were not substantially done with their planning, begun their build-outs, had their SUPs pulled and all that sort of stuff, that those licenses were going to get denied. But if they were, in theory, we should have had one of those 10-day windows open that we had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, nothing
where,
like
where
that
they
has
put
happened.
where they put out a call for applications, but they never did. So there's some hinky stuff going on here, and everybody says, "Oh, give us time to work it out. We're just starting this out."
Well,
and
sure,
everything,"
everyone
but,
was slow dragging it until Question 2 passed. No one wanted to put big money in after they saw a lot of these larger operations, losing a lot of money just due to medical. The demand wasn't there. So, I mean, if it was me and I was doing that, I'd try to slow drag it too, and that's why you see so many places trying to pop open now.
Well, so we're going to see where this goes, but this is something where we at WeCan are going to stay involved with through the next legislative session. But we also need you guys out there in the community to reach out and support us and support sensible marijuana reform in the Nevada legislature. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
From the soothing sounds of a water wall to the warmth, wood interior, and beautiful artwork, as soon as you enter Sahara Wellness, you are welcomed into a relaxing space where we strive to provide our patients with a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit. That balance is achieved through a compassionate and knowledgeable staff who possesses both a passion for the medical cannabis industry as well as unrivaled dedication to assisting those in need of a natural method of pain relief. Our budtenders are available to assist patients in selecting cannabis-based medicine that best suits their needs from our selection of flower, waxes, CBD lotions, and delicious edibles. Sahara Wellness is located at 420 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out our entire menu at www.420sahara.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Do you know what your cannabis actually contains? Are there heavy metals, pesticides, or even mold? And what strength is it really? And is it really what you need? Well, the answers to these questions are simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a Nevada state-approved medical marijuana testing facility whose scientists carefully test products for safety and potency, all within the state's rigorous mandate. You can buy with confidence and trust knowing DigiPath Labs has tested your medicine. If you're a licensed grower, dispenser, extractor, or edibles manufacturer in Nevada and want unparalleled customer service and consumer confidence, go to digipathlabs.com and find out what we can do for you. And as a patient, only go to dispensaries that carry the DigiPath Labs seal of approval. That's digipathlabs.com, DIGIPATH labs.com. Or call us at 702-209-2429. That's 702-209-2429.
And welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. Let's jump right back into it.
Back into it. You know, one of the things that has been consuming us here since Election Day is the surprise that was Donald Trump's election as President of the United States. I can't believe I'm saying that. But anyway, there have been a lot of stories coming out in the shows that immediately followed the election. We talked about some of our concerns, some of the people who might go into this administration, and now that we see more of these names being named, it only gets worse and worse. I mean, we started off with the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, senator from Alabama, who was too racist to be confirmed as a federal district court judge in the 1980s, and yet here we have him 30 years later, and he's going to be the Attorney General. And,
maybe.
Well, maybe, except he's a senator, and senators in the United States have a long-standing tradition of camaraderie and fellowship and everything, even for people on the other side. So it's very unusual for someone coming out of the Senate who gets picked for some sort of position that needs Senate approval. It's very rare for them not to get approved.
No doubt.
That collegiality of the U.S. Senate.
But on the flip side of that, I was a little concerned about his Department of Homeland Security pick, General Kelly, because he was a SOCOM drug warrior for, he involved in the Colombian interdictions and things like that, a very, very hardline anti-drug guy. But he came out the other day and he's just like, look, I got no problems with medical marijuana. You know what I mean? He's just
medicine
like,
is medicine, yeah.
Yeah, and he's just like, look, he's like, don't worry about me with all that. And, he apparently he claims to wield a decent amount of influence as Department of Homeland Security chief for incoming and has no problem with it, but avoided the recreational question pretty as much as he could. He didn't want to touch that.
Well, as he told some South American military leaders in remarks that had been publicized, don't worry about these legalization attempts because the federal law is that it's illegal and the law is the law. And so now he's put into a position where he can actually affect that policy. And this piece comes out of the RJ where they're saying, will these industry expansion plans be slowed by Trump's AG? And the Armin Yemenid. Wow, where do we get some of these names that I have to come up with on every show? Anyway, Armin, one of the founders and co-owners of Essence Cannabis Dispensary here in Vegas, says no one is calm about this issue. The industry is definitely not happy with the appointment, and we're very nervous about what he could potentially do. And indeed, what he can do as the nation's top cop is to undo all the legalization strides that have been made in the past 8 years in what is now a $6.7 billion cannabis industry here in the U.S. And he can undo a lot of this with nothing more than a pen and his signature.
I read an article the other day from the Marijuana Majority people that said that a group of 20 legalization activists and lobbyists made their way into his office on Capitol Hill to give him a talk. And during the meeting, he wasn't there. It was like his chief of staff and a couple other of his aides and things like that. And they're sitting talking. And in the back of the room, one of the activists decided to roll a joint right there, because it's decriminalized in D.C. So and he didn't even think anything of it, and he tried to pass it to the aide, and it's like that's funny to us, but I bet that fucking pissed him right off.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not, in my opinion, I don't think that's how you build bridges, is by kind of literally shoving it in the guy's face.
No. I agree with you.
It made news or whatever, I guess, but if you're really trying to convince this guy and you want to be taken seriously, for Christ's sake, pretend to be serious for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
I had that happen here in Nevada. One time I was at the Grant Sawyer building, and we were testifying before a Nevada Senate Judiciary Committee several years back. And we were up there, in a suit and tie. I mean, that's just how I address the legislature and this and that. And we had a couple other people addressing who were professionally dressed. And we had this one guy just show up out of the blue. He was wearing, one of those wife beater T-shirts and just looked like he had come out of the desert. And he came up there and said, I'm going to testify, I want to testify about this. And we were like, well, okay, let us go first. Let us do our thing, and then watch what we're doing. Oh, yeah, okay, but I want to testify and this and that. And so we got through our remarks. He went up there, and, you know, when you're dealing with people in a professional capacity, you treat them professionally. And Valerie Weiner was the senator in charge of the judiciary at that point. And he just gets up there and he's like, well, I'll tell you, Valerie, you got to change this law because we don't like it like this. And I'll tell you, all the people are smoking down here in Las Vegas. And you know, it's exactly what you're saying. Everything that this guy said, guaranteed, set these people on fire and just
you made your arguments constructively and professionally, and none of that was heard.
Nope. And so, you know, it's the same thing here with what you're saying. The takeaway there was not that you had a bunch of reformers coming in and having a serious discussion with Sessions' chief of staff.
All they remember is the guy rolling the joint and being an asshole.
Yeah. Exactly that. So, you know, and this is so very important because in 2013, it was the signing of the Cole memo by by then AG Eric Holder, which actually allowed for these dispensaries and other MMEs to really begin to flourish and come out of the shadows to some degree by laying out 8 points where the federal government had an interest, but otherwise they were going to de-emphasize it. You know, things like to kids or diversion or illicit trafficking to other states where it did not have medical marijuana, that sort of thing. But all that can be undone because it was just a memo. It was not passed by Congress. It was not an executive order or anything like that. It was just an opinion by the Attorney General, which then got carried down to the 93 U.S. attorneys around the country for what was going to be federal enforcement. So Jeff Sessions, if he does come in as AG, in overnight, he can change that whole thing. And currently, the marijuana industry in the U.S. is, I think I read recently, $6.7 billion, expected to go over $20 billion before 2020 and could go significantly higher than that. This one guy could just stop all that. And so, you know, you're right. He's going to have to be confirmed by the Senate. But it's a question of, is there anything that we can do to prevent that or stop that?
Because the nuclear, no, I would say probably not. They could force through anyone they want at this point if they really wanted to.
Well, this guy is a big problem because, you know, he has been a prohibitionist for decades, and he said in April, he said, we need grown-ups in charge in Washington to say that marijuana is not the kind of thing that ought to be legalized. It ought not to be minimized, that it's in fact a very real danger. I mean, come on.
Rhetoric like that is more dangerous than cannabis.
Exactly.
You know, rhetoric like that gets people's doors kicked in and murdered trying to flush a bag of pot down their toilet.
Yep.
You know, rhetoric like that gets people's dogs killed. Rhetoric like that gets people's assets seized
and
that they legally
their
made.
Entire lives, no doubt about it. Well, Derek Peterson, who's CEO of TerraTech, who has several licenses here in the state of Nevada, said that Sessions' views are archaic at best.
Your stock is garbage, Derek.
You know, and he says, I think the fear is a little bit irrational. Well, we'll be seeing if it's irrational if next year the SEC starts cracking down on companies like TerraTech, which are publicly traded and are yet running a federally illegal enterprise. So it's interesting to see where it goes. But, you know, if 60% of the country believes that this should be legal, I would hope that a person wouldn't put his own personal beliefs ahead of what his constituents would like. So says the co-owner of Essence.
You just said his constituents. So you're talking about his constituents. No, let's just talk about him as a senator.
Sure.
Okay, so as a constituent, he's from Alabama. Mm-hmm. Not exactly a supportive constituency, no. So he can go ahead and play to his constituency, as the owner said.
Yeah.
Well said, friend.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so let's get rid of that. All right, but but let's stick with that for a moment in the Trump administration, and that he revealed on Thursday that he's selected a fellow named Scott Pruitt, who's the current Oklahoma State Attorney General.
Wonderful. Isn't that one of the guys that was suing? Is that one of the guys that was suing Colorado? Oh,
yes.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. You may recall that that last year, several states, including Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, sued the state of Colorado in the Supreme Court, because that is the proper jurisdiction when states sue each other, to stop Colorado's legalization. They said because the pot that was being grown and sold and consumed in Colorado was making its way across the borders. I guess the wind was blowing and the smoke was wafting over to Kansas or something like that. But they these attorney generals from these states said that that Colorado's behavior was affecting them, and so the Supreme Court had to shut them down. The Supreme Court would not hear the case, essentially ending their argument.
Oh, good for them for that.
You know, if they want to enforce their archaic drug laws, they can do so, but they can't force another state to change just to suit them. But anyway, as you point out, this fellow Scott Pruitt was part of that action. You know, and what gets me with these guys is the hypocrisy of them.
Oh, absolutely. It's
You know?
always been my beef as a young Republican, or what I was raised to believe is a Republican, is champion individual liberty and, you know, keeps government out of my business and things like that. But
Personal responsibility.
that doesn't, you know, sure. Well, none of that really applies. That applies when they're talking about gun policy and other policy, but they're not all about that when it comes to cannabis. I mean, it's funny how certain people within the United States government will they'll trust a 16-year-old to drive a 4,000-pound vehicle at 100 miles an hour, however fast a vehicle can go, or send an 18-year-old to drive a tank. But when they come back, we can't trust you with marijuana. That's way more dangerous than the war we just sent you to fight.
Yeah.
And I could, or the driver's license thing, you give a 16-year-old, a car, but pot's too dangerous for a 21-year-old, and we could just go about it all the time. But the long and the short of it is that, Republicans champion individual liberty when it suits their political agenda, just like every other, political party in this country, which is why the two-party system sucks. And speaking of Oklahoma,
and yet though having more than a two-party vote in this election may have thrown it to Donald Trump.
That's always been the argument, though. That was the argument in 2000 with Gore. I mean, Ralph Nader is so much more than the guy who supposedly blew the election for Gore.
Absolutely.
He was the leader of all these organizations, and he was the guy who was responsible for seatbelts, I think. And there's all kinds of stuff, but he will always be vilified as that guy. I mean, George Bush Sr. still won't talk about Ross Perot to this day. He won't mention his, because he knows for a fact that he cost him the election with Clinton and things like that.
Yeah.
So, it just is what it is. And I really dislike the narrative that these people just play spoiler. These people think that they're honestly best for the job. They invest their whole lives into these campaigns to try to make this country a better place. Perot, Gary Johnson, all these people who try to go third party. And if the pollsters and the actual people who run the debates, in my opinion, would give them a damn fair shake and include all these people from the get, you'd have a much more diversified opinion of where this country really sits. Open primaries and things like that, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
They might actually get to 7% or even crack double digits at some point.
You never know.
Unfortunately, we do have the system that we're in.
Yeah.
And what we have is a federalist system where power rests in Washington, but is mostly granted to the states, yet you're subservient to that federal system. And this has been a big point that between Republicans and Democrats for many years, in that the Republicans are anti-federalist, and they say that the power should reside in the states, and that small limited government in the states is the best way to enact most of the policy.
I wish that were true.
Well, I mean, that's the theory, but it's not. But they say it when it suits them. This fellow Scott Pruitt is according to this article in Slate.com by Mark Joseph Stern, he's one of the phoniest federalists in the GOP. What he does is he backs expansive federal power when it suits him. At the same time, Pruitt supported the state's ability to regulate pollution within their own borders and keep the federal government from regulating it for them. He argued that states have no right to legalize marijuana. His rationale for this contradiction is that pollution isn't especially harmful to other people, but marijuana is.
Right,
And
right.
so you can't regulate pollution, but you can stop that joint, and it's just this kind of hypocritical faux arguments that people make just to twist things for when it suits them.
Sure.
It's just
I'm not surprised that Trump picked someone from Oklahoma for his cabinet. I was looking at the Electoral College map recently about the county by county breakdown of the popular vote, like who won what counties and things. Every single county in Oklahoma went for Donald Trump, without one. I think they're the only state in the country where every single county went. So I think he might be showing some loyalty back to that.
Well, where this brings me at this moment is here we are on the 13th, which is today. Today is an inflection point in history, right? You have all these things that go day to day to day, and our life goes on, and all of a sudden we're 50 years old. Yesterday we were 25, and you have, excuse me, I'm gonna have to just take a bitch getting old. Quick drink here, pulling a Marco Rubio.
No kidding.
But excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Where was I going with this thing? We have an inflection point today because most of the days life just goes on and on and on and on. Slow news days, right? They call them. But here we are today in America, where we have our Electoral College meeting today. And they're going to cast their votes on the 19th. But they're meeting today to determine the future of this country. And the purpose of the Electoral College is to prevent an unqualified person who is just, spirited in on the wings of populism, but has no business running the country. The Electoral College was meant to prevent those persons from actually assuming power. So here we are at one of those points where we have these people meeting, and these electors have our future in their hands, and they can determine of good conscience and good faith that Donald Trump is not qualified to be president, and they can vote for whoever they want. They could vote for John Kasich, they could vote for Jeb Bush, they could vote for anybody else.
Well, you know, I could say the same thing about Obama, but I would have been deemed racist. You know what I mean? So you can't say that.
Except
but
Obama
he
didn't
had no
lose the
business.
popular vote by almost 3 million votes.
Let's talk about the popular vote. They had agreed to the rules before the election had gone down. Donald Trump wasn't campaigning for the popular vote, and the reason why Hillary won by almost 3 million popular votes is because of her more than 4 million point vote swing in California. This is why the Electoral College exists, so that one state doesn't determine policy for the other 49. This is what happens in the heavily liberal areas, which is why the balance of power has to be put that way. Now, if we had been doing a popular vote, then he would have campaigned in places like New York and Florida and California more. So, unfortunately, I'm not for I'm for the Electoral College putting in place the 45th president of the United States, as was voted on by a disproportionate, a landslide, overwhelming Electoral College victory by Donald Trump of over 300 electoral votes that he won. And it's just one of those things. Like, I'm sorry. It's the sour grapes from the left. What the left should do is not be pointing the fingers and begging for the Electoral College to hold their diaper pins and fix this, but what they should do is free focus on their own losses and try to look inner and say, how did we lose this, and what can we do to get back to the dominant status that we had just a few short years ago? The Republicans now control the Supreme Court because of the slow dragging that McConnell did. They have the Supreme Court, the presidency, the House, the Senate, and they
control the government.
They have not only that, but on an individual level, over 60% of Americans have chosen a full Republican representation. Governor, House, Senate.
Right.
And so when the Democrats start looking at that and they're just still pointing, oh, you're a racist or you're a Messiah, none of those things work. This is what got them into trouble, is pointing the playing the damn blame game. And you want to talk about what's fair? What about Bernie? Where were you guys bitching so much when Bernie got fucking screwed by the DNC? I remember watching Hillary lose states by the popular vote and have all of the delegates go to her because of the way the rules were written.
Right.
The Democrats were the ones who rigged the election for Hillary. All of those people were good soldiers. Now, I congratulate them. I'm not congratulate them, but it's honorable for them to be such good soldiers and play together like that on behalf of her. Hell yeah,
sure.
That was an unbelievable show of unity, I thought, and it still. It split them in half more than if they would have just let the system play out and let them cut each other's throats out and see who really was the best candidate, which was probably Biden and Warren. If you had to make me do they had covered a lot of bases, but they didn't do that. They played all these games, and now they're crying sour, and it just is what it is. They need to look inside of their own. They need to do some soul searching before they start pointing the fingers.
I would just like to comment, though, that that the landslide that you talked about that Donald Trump had, the Electoral College landslide.
Maybe not a landslide.
I remember when Richard Nixon beat George McGovern in 1972, where Nixon won 49 states. When
Reagan, I remember when I was working for the Republicans in Reagan, when I used to work for a group called the 525 group in reference to the 525 Electoral College votes that he won.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, so I wouldn't call what Donald Trump has here a landslide. In the Electoral College, he won by he won the Electoral College by a significant margin, but I'm leery of giving him more legitimacy than he already has.
But that's what this is, though. All these things are like the Hillary campaign manager trying to say, "Oh, it was the Russians." Like in desperation, they blame the Russians. It's just unbelievable.
Maybe they're blaming the Russians because it was the Russians.
Well, maybe once again,
they were involved in this.
Well, once again,
the Americans shouldn't have been so stupid as to.
And they do well, and they do and the Democrats should have been not so stupid as to think that they could have conned the American people into voting for someone that they didn't want to vote for just because she was the damn nominee.
I agree. She was not the best candidate, and
all this is an effort to delegitimize the election. That's all this is, and it's not going to work. It just is what it is. Like I said, what Democrats need to do is just do what they do best. Do grassroots work and try to convince Americans that their ideas are better than the other side's.
Yep.
That's it.
And with that, we've got to convince you that our sponsors are the better places to go, so they keep us on the air. So stick with us, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Getting Legal offers an informative and simple way for you to get your marijuana card. Why come to Getting Legal to get your marijuana card? We have a 99% approval rating and the lowest price in town. Avoid legal problems. Getting Legal can get you legal fast. Ready for a new start? Come in now and get relief from your chronic conditions affecting your quality of life. Call Getting Legal today at 702-979-9999. That's 702-979-9999. Or visit our website at gettinglegal.com to get your marijuana card today.
It's tough.
And we're back.
And
Nevada
we're
Cannabis
back
News
indeed.
Hour.
So, all right. In our last segment here, we've got a couple more stories we'd like to cover. This one comes from sfgate.com by author Oscar Pasquale, and it says teen marijuana use is declining under legalization, according to federal data. And and this is an important thing. I think
the forbidden fruit theory coming into play.
Exactly that. And the article says that pot use among 8th and 10th graders has decreased since 2015, while use among 12th graders has stagnated. eighth grade use is down to 5.4% compared to 6.5% in 2015.
That's when I started.
That's a 20% drop.
That's when I started smoking grasses in eighth grade.
2015?
Yeah, shit. I'd probably been better off if I wouldn't have started in eighth grade and waited until 2015, but here we are.
Yeah, right. The rate of use in the 10th grade students is at its lowest level in over 2 decades. This is classic. Dr. Nora Volkow says, I don't have an explanation. And Dr. Nora Volkow is the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And she said, this is somewhat surprising. We had predicted, based on the changes in legalization, culture in the U.S., as well as decreasing perceptions among teenagers that marijuana was harmful, that accessibility and use would go up, but it hasn't gone up.
I would have to concur with her. I thought that all of our talking points on that was just nonsense. The kids were going to jump right on it, but
because the kids who want to smoke are already smoking. They're not letting fear of arrest or anything like that stop them. And so now that it is no longer that forbidden fruit, it's just another thing. And as you have these states where legalization has resulted in retail outlets, those places have multi-million-dollar licenses to protect.
Right.
And in Washington, they went in recently and went undercover and tried to buy pot with using an underage buyer, and they did not find a single place that would sell it to them.
They take it seriously. Like here in Vegas, I've covered it before. If you're an alcohol retailer and you get caught selling to an underage person, you get a slap on the wrist, and then the second time you'll get a fine, and then the third time you'll get a fine. It's worth it for them. If you look at like the risk versus the reward, sometimes it's worth it to sell it to the kids because they're like, fuck it, we're making some, like if we get caught, we'll just pay the fine and go, to hell.
Which is different here in the marijuana.
No,
industry.
they will. Oh my God, I can't
on
imagine what would happen if someone was to get caught selling pot to an underage. It'd be on the news for sure. Well, certainly.
But what strikes me here is that you've got the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, who has been an ardent drug warrior for years now. I'm familiar with this person, and she's just totally blown away that kids might decide, well, just because it's legal doesn't mean I have to go smoke my brains out.
That's great. I'm happy that she didn't try to give some ridiculous explanation and just said it very bluntly and scientifically. Look, we don't understand it, and that's okay that you don't understand.
So if the government and all the prohibitionists worried that marijuana use is going to skyrocket if we have legalization and all the kids and this and that. Well, it's not the kids. So if it's not the kids that are smoking it, who is, we wonder? Well, interestingly, we see it's you over there, John. But recently, and this also comes out of SFGate, a study conducted by New York University's Langone Medical Center has found a massive increase in the rate of pot use over the age of 50 since 2006. And researchers evaluated data from 47,140 adults. So that's a
large sample size.
Aged 50 or older in the U.S. Through a secondary analysis of the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. From 2006 to 2013. And I always have to wonder about the numbers from these, because these are a survey where you're sitting at home, you're munching on your Cheetos, you're vegging out on the TV, you're smoking another doob, and the phone rings and somebody says, I'm from the federal government and we're doing a survey on illegal drug use. By any chance, have you been using heroin, cocaine, oxycodone, marijuana, PCP,
you're
MDMA,
like,
or anything
no.
like that in the last month, in the last year? And how many people are going to say it? But enough people say, fuck it, I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and admit to this, that they still have a huge amount of people saying, I think the numbers of use are even higher than those who will admit. But the authors found a 71% increase in marijuana use among adults the age of 50 and over throughout the same time period of 2006 to 2013. Adults aged 65 and older used pot significantly less, although their prevalence of use actually increased nearly 3 times as much over the span of 8 years.
Wow.
So you've got 50 pluses smoking a lot more, and you've got the senior citizens smoking more. But in
if you're an analyst or a marketing director, you're looking at changing your marketing strategy potentially.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So, it's interesting to see where everybody, the kids. No. Oh, my God, the seniors. Grandpa's going to forget where he put his Fritos. My God, this is terrible.
Well, Grandpa might have a little bit more disposable income than the kids. You might want to think about advertising to them instead.
There's absolutely that. And so, we always have too much news. We just got a couple of minutes left, but we got to touch on this piece, Perry, because
sure.
we held this over from last week, but it's really important and demonstrates what we're talking about.
Well, the report, this is from
Derek Stanley over at Hemp News.
Yeah. The report says that beer volumes have been declining in markets where recreational marijuana is legal. I didn't think it would have such an immediate effect on the beer sales, but the alcohol industry is already taking notice and putting out kind of not warnings, but like whispers like, hey, watch out for this.
That's why the beer truck drivers and the wholesalers fought against this in California in 2014.
Yeah.
It's why we got them on board in Nevada for IP2.
And here we are in 3 markets that they're targeting on this study. It's Washington, Colorado, and Oregon, which are, of course, recreationally cannabis legal, but also craft beer is very popular in these 3 states. I mean, if you're a beer drinker, So let's just go over it real quick. Economy beer sales are down 2.4% year over year, and premium domestic volumes like Bud Light, Coors Light, etc., they're down 4.4%. Craft beer growth has slowed in the 3 markets, but Oregon and Washington are kind of still seeing a little bit of growth in the craft beer area, but the major beer, the traditional beer sales are
so what's happening is you're allowing people to have another choice of recreational substance, and the fact that you have something that is less harmful overall is taking people and saying, well, I don't need to buy a case of beer for the weekend. Maybe I can just do with a 6-pack.
Stop by the dispensary instead, yeah.
Stop by the dispensary instead.
We'll see how it rolls. We'll see how these numbers play out as the years go by.
Indeed. So we hope that all of you will be out there and stop by your local dispensary and support our sponsors. They help us bring this show to you every week and give you the latest news. And with that, we're going to sign off for today. Another episode concluded. We'll see you back here next week with the latest news in cannabis from Nevada and beyond. Thanks for joining us.